Well, hey, everybody, you got the RV Wingman here, and have we got a story for you today? If you missed yesterday's video, you really need to watch it first to get a handle on what's going on with this two-part story. A link to it is in the description down below. Please check it out. It really is good. Now, if you choose to watch this video first, let me say I just concluded an interview with a guest who has never been on the show before, and she is a legal badass named Beth Wells. She may not like me calling her that, but I do it in a most complimentary way, I promise. Now, here's the deal. At the end of the story, I'm going to want to know what you think about it. So please drop your comments below. Again, you should watch part one first, but here goes. If you are the buyer of a new RV, do you remember the day you actually took possession of it? It's typically one of the most exciting times of your life. Along with the feeling of being a little overwhelmed, the dreams of going where you want, when you want. They're so intoxicating. Most of the time, things go pretty well, but not always. You're about to hear the story of a family who could never even dream of what would be in their future just hours after taking possession of an RV they paid more than $100,000 for. This story is not to scare you away from buying an RV, but it's to demonstrate an actual true scenario and the way the RV manufacturer and Camping World has responded. This is one hell of a story.
This story started back in December of 2021. The Domans purchased a 2021 Heartland Road Warrior, which is a fifth wheel recreational vehicle, and they purchased it from Camping World in Washington. Couple days before that, they had purchased a truck to pull the RV and a Polaris RZR to store in like the garage area in the back of the RV.
So it was a toy hauler, and it was not a cheap one.
No. and so they spent the entire day negotiating the purchase, and had planned the following day to head off on a family trip with their kids and dogs on the way to Utah. The Camping World manager allowed them to stay on the lot just so that they could have somewhere to stay. And they were to head out the next morning. So
hang on, that was going to be their initial trip, their first trip with a camper. They had to be excited, over the moon about their new purchase and their upcoming trip with the family and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yes, they were excited about the trip. They took some time once the purchase was final to unpack everything, get all set. And before they went to bed, they turned on the heat. They tried the electric heat, and there's also an LP heating system. Neither of those were working. So they called the Camping World manager, who had given them his phone number in case they had problems, called him a couple times, couldn't reach him, left a couple of voicemails asking for help. And then in the meantime, they ended up discovering that there were some blown fuses. So they replaced those, and the LP gas heat would not work, but the electric heat worked. So they used the electric heat that night, set off the next morning.
Hang on just a second. But they did it right. I mean, they stayed for the night, their initial night, just to make sure everything was working right. It wasn't working right, but they patched it, I guess, at the instructions of the manager, somebody there at Camping World.
Well, they tried to reach out to him, but they couldn't reach him. So they headed off the next morning, and they still didn't hear from him, but around noon they heard from him, and they talked about the issues that they'd had with the LP gas system, heating system, and he told them, finish your trip, just follow up with us after the trip and we'll get you in the shop for repair. So that's what they did as instructed, continued on their trip. And then around 8 o'clock that evening, they had a dash warning on the dash of the truck that basically said that the trailer braking system cable wasn't properly connected to the truck. So Mr. Doman pulled over at the first exit available, checked the brake cable, everything was fine, but he noticed a glow from the LP exhaust pipe. It was like glowing red. So he went over, opened the door to the RV, and there were flames in the stair entryway and kind of in the floor area there, right below the electrical control panel.
So this wasn't a little fire. This was like a fire. I mean, a real fire.
This was a fire, and he tried to put it out a couple different ways, and ultimately, just like a few minutes later, it was burnt to the ground. Luckily, Mrs. Doman and her oldest son were able to get the kids and the dogs out of the vehicle, and they were safe, although of course frightened. And
so they were stuck on the side of the road within 24 hours, 48 hours for sure, of when they left the dealership?
Yes, and their RV had burnt down. Mr. Doman ended up having to he was rushed to the hospital for smoke inhalation, and that was the end of their trip. It ended in Montana.
So that's the end of the trip, but the beginning of a new chapter, I guess, of their life, and which led to them meeting you. I mean, what did they do anything wrong so far? In your opinion, do you think they could have done something better, or did they do anything wrong, or?
No, I mean, all they did was reach out for help to the authorized dealer when they experienced a problem. And of course, they couldn't have imagined that their RV was going to be in flames in a couple hours.
So what happened? I mean, so did they contacted, they didn't contact you first. They contacted probably Camping World first, I would imagine.
Well, they resolved issues with their insurance company, but they're still out a good amount of money. And so they tried to resolve things, but were not able to before suit needed to be filed.
And it was a total loss, you're saying?
Yes.
So who was at fault? I mean, this was 2 years ago, Beth. I would think that if it was clear somebody was clearly at fault, it would have been resolved within 2 years. What's the process been like, and how did you get involved?
So we got involved when they weren't able to work out anything beyond the insurance company payout. And because of the statute of limitations, we had to go ahead and file the case right away. Although we did try to resolve things pre-suit as the language in the warranty requires. And so at this point, they have a lawsuit against both Camping World and Heartland. They're alleging that Heartland should have properly inspected the RV and been able to see this issue prior to selling the RV to them. And they're arguing that Heartland manufactured the RV improperly with this defect.
So they've accepted no responsibility for this? I mean, who do you think? I'm not trying to hold your feet to the fire, metaphorically speaking, but who do you think is at fault? What do you think kind of transpired? Because it sounds like your clients, the Doman family, did nothing wrong. I mean, they did what the tens of thousands of people do every single year. They trusted the dealer, they hooked up, and they took off either to home or on a trip.
But I think Heartland, number one, manufactured the product improperly with this defect in the LP gas system. And then Camping World dropped the ball in failing to identify that defect when they did their pre-sale inspection of the RV. And also failing to instruct the Domans to get something repaired or have something done when they talked to them after that notification.
Okay, so this happened in December 2 years ago, December of 21. When did your law firm get involved? I mean, it sounds like the statute of limitations may have been running out, so they had to do something or else just end up with a big loss.
Right. So our law firm sent a letter to Heartland in February of 2023, and then we filed suit right before the statute of limitations expired in March of 2023.
So what's been their response? I mean, without getting into legalese and stuff, are they like, okay, guilty, we're going to settle up, or what have you had to deal with, Beth?
So as of this point, there was a motion to dismiss filed by Heartland, arguing that the warranty claims should be dismissed. That was denied, and then subsequent to that, both Heartland and Camping World have filed motions to transfer the case. Heartland's trying to transfer it to Montana, and Camping World is trying to transfer it to Washington.
It sounds like the term lawfare to me. You know, it's that corporations will throw whatever they can to try to get something, you know, try to place the blame someplace else instead of where it's squarely, at least from the way you're describing it, where it needs to be, on Heartland, I guess, to begin with. Yeah,
so unfortunately, manufacturers know that customers, individuals like the Domans, they can't afford to litigate two separate lawsuits, like one in Washington and one in Montana. They know that litigating in Montana is going to be a lot more expensive. The area that we would have to travel to would be more remote. And then there's also like not only financial issue for them, they have their daughter who was a baby and is now 1 year old. She has a lot of medical issues, which require them to basically travel with her. And they have friends in Indiana who have already offered to care for the daughter when they're in court in Indiana, but they don't have that situation in either Montana or Washington. So not only is that a financial issue for them to either transfer or sever the case into two separate courts, it's also like an emotional and personal issue for them to have to deal with.
I can only imagine, especially if it was a total loss. Talk about a ruined vacation. It would scar me for life. What kinds of moves has Heartland made in terms of legal moves that are like, you got to be kidding me? Because I'm sure it's, you know, for something dragging on for 2 years now, they've had to throw some stuff out going, it's not our fault, and turn it around to blame the customer. I think
the thing that, aside from just the typical stuff that's frustrating here, and especially for the Domans, is that their warranty says they have to file the lawsuit in Indiana. So that's what they did. And then Heartland turned around and told them it needs to be moved to Montana. And that just, it just doesn't seem fair to them, because that they were just following what they were told to do. And Heartland's warranty that Heartland drafted and Heartland created. So
when they came out and inspected, they meaning Heartland or a representative of Heartland, when they came out and inspected the RV after the fire, what did they find and what did they determine?
So that by the time that the Domans came to us, the RV had already been disposed of. So I'm not aware whether or not Heartland inspected or not, because that was before I got involved.
So you guys, this is going to be going to trial, it sounds like. I mean, at least it's moving in that direction, because they're trying to move. Let's go to Washington. Okay, you guys go to Montana or wherever. It just sounds like this. It's my word. I'm not a lawyer, but this collusion almost. This is the game that we have to play with these consumers to either wear them out emotionally or financially or both. And it's, I don't know, it's just, this is one of those things that doesn't happen very often, but when it happens, it's a real clear example of how too many big corporations just, hey, it's not our fault. And they just put all the burden back on the consumer. I mean, they couldn't afford your law firm, I wouldn't think. Most people can't.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful that pretty soon we'll have a decision on these two motions, because they were very recently filed. And we'll know at least where we're going to be so that we can start arguing about the merits of the case. They've already been waiting, like you said, almost a year with the lawsuit pending. So I'd like to get to the merits of the case and be able to help them get to the next step.
Question. So that they had a UTV or a Razor or something, I think you said, that was in the toy hauler. Their truck, did it all burn? Everything's burned up? It was all just a total disaster, everything?
Yes, they lost everything.
What about the bank if they had a lien holder? I mean, it's none of my business maybe, but I would think that the bank would say, well, you know, I know that's bad. You got insurance, but you still owe payments on the thing. And yes, no?
I'm not entirely sure what happened with the loan.
Yeah. It's got to be so stressful. I shouldn't be smiling. It's like, oh my God, how can somebody that had their hopes are so high when they buy that RV? You know, you've got big dreams and this kind of thing happens. Your general partner there, Ron Burge, has talked about roadblocks many times when we have talked about these RV manufacturers and their warranties. They put different things in there. He calls them roadblocks. And what are some of the roadblocks that have become apparent, I guess, in this case, and that others who have an RV may want to be aware of, a roadblock or a speed bump that may lie ahead for them?
So one roadblock in this warranty is the backup remedy. So the repair remedy is that you have to have the RV repaired and give them a reasonable opportunity to repair it before you do anything in the courthouse. There's also a backup remedy that requires you to do 2 additional things that relate to having like a repair shop of your choice repair and pay for the and have Heartland pay for the repairs, and then also ask Heartland to pay diminished value damages. The court has already found that the plaintiffs complied with that portion, because that 30 days or so that we were involved, they did comply with those elements. So the court's already found that they complied with the backup remedy. That's not an issue anymore in this case, but that could be an issue with consumers. Another issue.
I want to go back to something real quick. Did you tell me that part of the warranty is the manufacturer has to have the opportunity to repair whatever the damage happens to be? How could you repair a totally burnt out RV?
Well, that was our response when they tried to dismiss the warranty claims. And we argued that the repair remedy failed of its essential purpose because the fire was unexpected and no one anticipated that the RV was going to burn up. And then also that repair was a legal impossibility, and the court agreed with us.
I am no lawyer, but it would seem like to me, just with a personality of a junkyard dog, and you guys are, I mean, you're nice, but you are, I would think that you look forward maybe to a jury trial. If it went that far, I mean, what kind of 12 people out there wouldn't go, you got to be kidding me?
This is definitely a case that would be fun to try.
Now, to be fair, this situation is not at all typical, but the Dolman family, I believe, are very fortunate to have a badass RV lemon lawyer on their side. But isn't it interesting to hear about all the legal filings and requests and how the manufacturers seemingly done everything they can to not accept responsibility? While I have no idea of how this story is going to end, I think it goes to show the importance of being prepared for almost anything, even the unthinkable. Like this. You know, there's a term called lawfare. I mentioned it in the video. It's where the lawyers decide to throw everything in the book at a case in hopes of getting it thrown out, or at least, I don't know, mitigating their losses, even when it may be obvious who is at fault. Maybe this is a bad analogy, but it came to my mind. Do you remember the Ford Pinto? Remember back then? And how it turned out that the folks at Ford knew that there was a safety issue with their gas tanks exploding in a rear end collision, but they went ahead and manufactured them anyway. I am not saying that Heartland intentionally knew that they had an issue or that they have a widespread issue. It could be an accident, but wouldn't the world be a nicer place if corporations owned up to the things that go wrong for their customers without dragging them through a painful, long, emotional, and stressful legal process? But what do you think of this story? How do you think it should end? Do you think the Dolman family will prevail? I can't wait to read your comments. I'll close by saying this. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't give legal advice, but I am the wingman. And if you've got a situation that you're dealing with your RV, I would like to try and help. Let me hear from you. My contact info is in the description down below. Please give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you again very, very soon.